This is Nathan Lawrence, Good News Tree Service in Wilsonville, Oregon, and it's time for another update on my own Sukashi, Cascadia Japanese garden. I have come under the direct influence of Hawichi Kurisu, the foremost Japanese landscape designer, landscape architect, and landscape garden constructor in North America, and he is world renowned. So I have been making changes and updating things, and I want to share that with you. Thanks for listening and stay tuned. Hello friends on YouTube and lovers of Japanese gardens and the Japanese style of gardening that goes back for hundreds of years, back to the 8th century. I'm going to give you a tour. We've had a lot of updates, a lot of changes. Japanese garden is always in transition. It's always being updated. Plants are dying, plants are growing, plants need to be moved. You get new ideas, you keep improving. At least that's what my situation is. Today is about the third week in August, and it's a perfect day to make a video. A little bit overcast, the sun is not glaring, and so there aren't harsh shadows. So I want to showcase some of the things that I have been updating and changing and adding and subtracting in my Japanese garden. Come along with me on this journey, and thank you for allowing me to share this with you, and maybe this will inspire you in your own garden to do some things. If I can do it, probably anybody can. Also, I have come under the direct influence of Hawichi Kurisu, and I've been having a chance to work with him. In fact, recently he even visited my garden. So as always, we will start from the outside in, walking in off the street. I live in a small neighborhood and don't have a large property. Here is a blue atlas cedar that I just pruned out. It was kind of hot day, so when I did it, and the weather the next few days was in the 80s and 90s, and get a little bit of sunburn, but we'll brush the dead needles off. It will survive. But here is the front gate. Here's my torii gate. Every garden needs to have a gate that you go through because you're kind of stepping into a whole nother dimension, the dimension of the Japanese garden. And my Japanese garden wraps around my little 1920 house. And some things that I have done, I haven't made a video since last winter updating this garden, but prior, I had this open lawn area here in the front of my house. And I decided, instead of having a squarish type front lawn, I decided to sculpt it. And so I added this bed here, planted moss. It's actually a type of Scotch moss. It's not really traditional in the Japanese garden to have this kind of moss, but because this is a sunny area, regular moss doesn't do so well. So I got this Scotch moss, which apparently is not even really a moss, but I wanted a ground cover. And so we added that, and I've got focal points, and I added this island also. I wanted something to break up the expanse of this grass. And so I got these shore pines, these Pinus contortas, which I'm now pruning in the kind of a quasi-Niwaki, Sukashi style. And it will take a few years to get them, develop the pads and the layers and get them the way I want them to look. And I got these Mugo pines, and added some rocks. And I wanted, as you go around the front yard, around to the back, which is the main garden, I wanted an obstructed view. I wanted something that where you have to kind of walk between the trees to get to the back. And so it kind of integrates the walker, that is the person is strolling in the garden, with the trees. The trees, I'm going to keep them that size. This here is I think it's a subalpine fir. I got that from a nursery. It had a dead top and some other dead things on it. I thought it had really great character. And of course, it's got mosses on it, which also adds character. And then so you have to kind of walk around through an obstructed view as you walk around past this blue atlas cedar, another one, like the one at the front gate that I just pruned out. And we come around. I put this bamboo screen in to kind of hide my water faucet back there and also give kind of an obstructed view as you kind of walk around this path, and it increases the interest and the curiosity of the person walking, wondering what's around the corner. And then I finally got myself a Pinus thunbergii, a Japanese black pine. This is a more columnar variety. There's many different varieties and subspecies of black pines. And so I put that there. And let me show you something else I did. So when I planted these 5 conifers out here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, actually 4, that one was already there. I had them all vertical, perfectly vertical. I mean, that's just kind of the Western mindset, is to have everything really symmetrical. And recently I've been working with, as more as a fly on the wall, if you will, job shadowing Hawichi Kurisu, the famed landscape architect who built the Japanese garden in Portland, which is the #1 Japanese garden in North America, as well as the Murakami Japanese garden in Florida, and the Anderson Japanese garden in Illinois, and the Frederick Mayer Japanese garden in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and many other Japanese gardens across the United States. And he is building a garden. So I have been job shadowing for the last 4 or 5 months the world-renowned Hawichi Kurisu. As you know, if you watch this video, I'm a big fan of his. He's now 86 years old, but he's going strong, building gardens all over the United States. And he and his crew are finishing building a garden for one of my clients here in the local area that I have been I've been caring for their trees for 4 owners of this house for 25 years. And he originally, 40 years ago, designed the Japanese garden for the owners, the original owners of the house. And now there's been 4 or 5 owners since then, at least, that I know of. And I have been having a chance to interview him, spend time with him, and watch him in action. And I planted these conifers in my yard in a perpendicular, straight up manner. And when Hawichi Kurisu was planting that he gotten from his nursery a number of black pines in this landscape, I noticed that everyone was leaning, everyone was at an angle, whereas my pines were all vertical. So I came home one day and I pushed them all over at an angle. Why? Because it is more natural for trees in most cases to grow at an angle, and it's more interesting. It's asymmetry, and it also creates movement in the garden. And in this case, they're all the trees here are pointing. I've got them leaning toward the way the path meanders around the side of my house here, and it kind of leads the eye forward. Now here, how do you like this? As a little side note, this is a piece of bamboo. I have a client that's got bamboo. This piece of bamboo is about 3.5, 4 inches in diameter. And it's so that when I wrap my hose, I pull my hose around my garden hose, this protects the plants from the garden hose getting into the plants and causing damage to them. So anyways, you walk around, and the path here, you are drawn into the garden because everything's kind of pointing in this direction. So anyway, another thing that I did is I moved my bell. I had this in the back, in my backyard, and I moved my bell, which of course we have to ring, because at the entrance to many Japanese gardens, there is a bell, and there is a place for washing. And it signifies that when you ring the bell, you are coming into a sacred place, a special place that's different than everything else. And so you clear your mind by ringing the bell and by ceremonially washing in a little font there that is often at the entrance to the garden. So anyway, these are things that I have done that are a little different. I've redesigned. Of course, this is my second gate that goes into the backyard, which is the main part of my Japanese garden. There's my gate, my own special gate that I made a few years ago. So I also redesigned all these rocks that all kind of, if you look at them, they all kind of point. They're angled in a way that kind of leads the person onward. They all kind of point toward the backyard. And that was something too that I redesigned. And here we are. And now I had another tree right here that I removed because it was blocking the view. I wanted a view going into the backyard, but I wanted these trees. These are two kinds of cedrus trees, a Lebanon cedar and a deodara cedar, I should say, and then a blue atlas cedar, Cedrus atlanticus. And I have just recently pruned them, so they look pretty good. And I removed this. There was a juniperus that was here. I removed that, and I just found locally a pine that I had never seen before. It's a type of, let's see, let me look at the tag. I got all my things. It's a compact Taniusho Japanese red pine. And I've never seen anything like that, but it just is so Japanese looking. If you go down there, you can see kind of it. Got a nice little shape to it, and I wanted that there, so I just recently planted that here a couple of weeks ago. And come around here, and I then made a little display rack for a few of my bonsais that I have. And I used to have it behind my hot tub. We just got a new hot tub, but the hot tub cover, when it flips up, it used to be over there, my bonsais, but the hot tub cover, when it flips up, would get in the way and knock the bonsais over. So I built my display rack here, and we've got the screen to the deck that kind of showcases them, instead of them being up against the arborvitaes before, where they kind of got lost in the foliage of the arborvitaes. And then I put a drip system in. So that's new. The bell used to be here, but I moved it around to the back of the house, as we just noted. And then I just installed another large piece of bamboo here, again, as a hose guard to protect the plants. So here's something that I got. I was in somebody's yard, and one thing that's really special about the Japanese is they like to take old things, detritus, stuff that has been neglected, that's old, and incorporate them into their gardens, and it makes the gardens seem more ancient. And how many of you can guess what this is? So I was working in one of my clients' yards recently, and I saw these laying in the corner, and they've just kind of cast off. And I asked them if I could have them, and they said yes. So what do you think those are? There's one piled on top of another. Yes, if you guessed right. They came from our local electric company. They're insulators. They came off of those big electrical transmission lines. Those things are probably, those particular ones are probably 50, 60 years old. I don't know. And they look to me like little pagodas or little Japanese lanterns. So I got 3 of them. I have one in the front yard and 2 I stacked on top of each other and glued them together. And that's what we have there, which is kind of interesting. Oh, and another thing too is I got these peeler poles. I used to have bamboo here, but the bamboo has a little retaining, kind of a little retaining wall, and the bamboo was rotting. And I'm going, yeah, that's not a good idea. So I got peeler poles and I cut them, and then I burned them. And this was another example from Hawichi Kurisu. He does this, and I pulled out all the bamboo and I replaced them with these more robust peeler poles. They're actually pine, and then I burned them to give them a more aged look. It's kind of cool. And then I had some plants back here. They weren't doing too well. They wanted more shade. They were viburnum Davidii. And so I put in some Raphiolepis. And they're small, but they're going to get large, and they're going to a little bit larger, and they will kind of grace the edge of that lantern over there. And I've been trying to get moss to grow on that thing. Moss just doesn't want to grow. Some lichens are starting to grow on this. I've tried to sow moss up there, and it just doesn't take. So I guess moss is something that has to grow naturally. I've tried all kinds of things, and it doesn't work. So, and moss just dies. So, again, this is all pretty much the same back here, except I took out a weeping hemlock that was here in this spot, and because it blocked my dry stream bed, I couldn't see that, and it just blocked it from view. And I put in this is like I think a type of mugo pine, so you can kind of look through. You see the dry stream bed. And again, I replaced the bamboo with peeler poles, or peeler, these poles. I got fence posts basically at the local farm supply store and cut them with a chop saw, and then I rounded the edges off with a sander and then burned them. And here's my little dry stream bed that comes down, and this is a little kind of a beach scene here. I've got driftwood that I picked up off of the beach, and I got some Japanese, of course, ancient Japanese floats that washed up on the Oregon coast many years ago, and they're made from. They help to keep the nets from sinking, and they're made from old sake bottles. And yeah, I'm really happy with my variegated euonymus. I'm growing this all together, so it will be a mass, just one big sheared mass. And my pine tree is coming along nicely too. I've been pruning that now for several years in a Sukashi style. And I've got the bamboo screen there that I'm working on to fill that in there in front of my barn. And of course, then here we have more of the peeler poles. I pulled out the bamboo. And I put peeler poles back here. And then That goes to the back. You don't want to see what's behind that screen. I've got ladders and all kinds of other things kind of hidden from view. So it would detract from the garden if we looked at that. So that's why I've got that screen there. Now this is the view from my back deck, looking out. And the grass is a little bit rough. It's been a long, hot summer, and I've been watering copiously. And we've got some bare spots that I'm seeding in. It's an ongoing process, goes on and on and on, always tending the garden. And this is my back deck. Again, I've got some bonsais in pots. They're not small pots, they're large pots, but that's the way it is. And then I've got bamboo. This is a kind of a hand railing of bamboo here. And then I've got my little water feature, which I'm going to redo that eventually. I need some better rocks, but at least I got the sound of water in there. And here's a juniperus that I recently pruned out. And it's looking pretty good. Of course, there's those ugly apartments up there that I can't do anything about, so I pretend they're not there. And yeah, and here's the new hot tub we just got. And I've tried the best I can to incorporate that into the landscape, into the garden, so it doesn't stick out. It's kind of wood paneled and wood and simulated wood paneling. And here we go around. This is the back of my office. And this is a little mountain hemlock that I just bought. I haven't even planted it yet. It's a little collected species. And it's going to go here next to the door. And of course, here's a rack that I made out of a hinoki cypress that I cut down recently for a client. And that's for people to hang their towels on when they visit the hot tub. And so here we are. So in conclusion, I want to briefly talk about the Cascadian. This is my term. The Cascadian style of Japanese aesthetic pruning in the Sukashi style. The reason I call it Cascadian is because I live here in Western Oregon and we have the Cascade Mountains in our neighborhood. I can be up on the side of Mount Hood within an hour and a half to 2 hours. We also have the Pacific Ocean about 2 hours to the west of us. And along the Pacific Ocean, as well as up on the mountains at about the 6,000 or 7,000 foot level, we have a lot of beautiful trees that grow. They're basically bonsais. They're growing on the edges of cliffs, on the side of the mountains, and under very harsh environmental conditions. And many times people that are bonsai artists go up in the mountains and they what's called collected species. They dig these up and then they bring them down and they prune them in a Japanese in a bonsai style. They put them in small pots and they begin to prune them and work with them. Most of the plants that I work with are in the ground. They're in the landscape. They're not so much in small pots. This is what we do for our clients. And well, I have all the respect in the world for the Japanese pruners in Japan and wherever else there are Japanese gardens. I am often not very fond of much of the pruning styles. I respect it, but it's not natural enough. Some styles are more natural than others, like the Sukashi style, where you prune things in a more open, natural look. But even that can be overly manicured and overly pruned, almost in a caricaturized, fakey kind of a manner. And there's a place for that. I don't disparage that. But that's not what I see so much growing in the out of doors. I have spent my entire life in the mountains, skiing, hiking, mountain climbing, backpacking, camping, river rafting, all over the Cascade Mountains, Oregon, Washington, and many other places too, in other states and other places in the world, but mostly in this area. And the Cascadian style is a style of pruning that I have, which I have developed and which my clients like, because this is what we see in the out of doors around us. And it is what I call God's style of pruning. It's what nature naturally does to trees. And I'm not saying the Japanese don't replicate that. They do, but then they often stylize things in a way that, again, becomes a little bit too artificial for my tastes and for the tastes of my clients. And so you'll notice that my style of pruning is much more, generally speaking, much more natural, open. And I have a saying I like to say, when we prune trees or ornamental shrubs for people, we try to prune it in a way that it looks like it was not touched by the hand of man. Now that's not always possible, but that's the goal. That's what I see in nature, and that's what I think is the most beautiful, generally speaking. And that's what I am trying to replicate in my garden. And that's what the style of pruning that Good News Tree Service does. So you see that I've pruned these things in a really open and natural style. Now, yes, we can do the more manicured look, like on this juniper or this other juniper here by my back door, over my water feature. But you'll notice this Hinoki cypress by my hot tub. I have pruned this purposely in a very natural way. I think this is more to the liking of more people because it's what they see in nature. Now, I know others who are highly skilled, and I respect the craft and the artistry, will prune something like a Hinoki cypress in clusters with everything going up, all the little branchlets going up in a heavily manicured way. And that's beautiful in its own way. But it is not what you see occurring naturally in nature. It's not what you see in the mountains and along the sea coasts and in the gorges and the canyons and clinging to the rocks and the cliffs. And this is what I have tried to get away from and prune things in a real natural looking kind of a way. So when people walk into my backyard, they go like, yes, he has brought nature down into his own yard. And I feel like it's just what I would see in the mountains, but in a more manicured and designed kind of a way. So that's why I call it the Cascadian style of landscaping. I've pruned everything in that way. Some more manicured, some less. Just depends on the plant, depends on what I'm trying to achieve, and as the artist, depending on what makes me happy. So I hope this little tour of my garden has been enlightening to you, and it's a work in progress. We keep making improvements, getting ideas, and trying to improve. It's an ongoing process, but I encourage you to maybe try this in your own garden. You don't need a very big space. My yard is very small. As I've said before, if you live in an apartment and only have let's say a balcony or a patio, or maybe you live in a condo or a townhouse and you only have a small courtyard, you can do these kinds of things in very small areas and enjoy the wonderment and the beauty of the Japanese garden styles, even in your own, you got a little courtyard, or even inside your house, you can make a little Japanese garden if you have enough light. So there you go. I hope this has been a blessing to someone. And I appreciate your comments. And thank you for the kind remarks that many of you have left in the past. And I try to read and answer every single one of them. If there's a question, Otherwise, I enjoy the comments. All right. God bless. Thank you. Take care. Until next time.